everyone, and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record today, which is 33 1/3 by George Harrison. So yes, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album's tracks in detail. So this was George Harrison's 7th solo album, released on the 19th of November in 1976. It was the first album that he released on his own record label Dark Horse Records, which he had launched around 2 years previously. However, he was forced to release the albums Dark Horse and Extra Texture on Apple because he hadn't quite finished his contract with them. In the intervening time period since Dark Horse Records had been established, they had issued a wide range of records, by the likes of mostly George's pals, really, so people like Ravi Shankar and Billy Preston, but none of these were any successful, and A&M Records, who were on board as the distributor for Dark Horse, were growing a little bit wary of kind of flop after flop, and they were essentially waiting for George to finish his contract with Apple and then get on very quickly to releasing an album on their label. But despite this imperative to have something to release on Dark Horse under George's own name, George took a very lax kind of approach to this album, and work started in earnest on the album in May of 1976, but halfway through the sessions George contracted hepatitis, and this delayed work on the album for a few months. And I think George was due to deliver an album to A&M in something like July or something. So he really didn't allow himself a lot of time to make an album, and consequently A&M got very upset I think tried to sue George, but I think he settled by returning his advance and then shifting Dark Horse's distributor over to Warner Brothers. Now, the album in many ways represents a bit of a new beginning for George. The previous couple of years had been a bit tumultuous and hectic for George. All the touring and the LA lifestyle, a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, relationship turbulence as well. So he wasn't in the best place in the previous years. But kind of coming into this album, he'd really settled into a new life, really. Living predominantly in England, at his Friar Park estate. This album was a homespun affair recorded entirely at Friar Park. He also, around this time, was developing other personal interests away from music, and ones that would become big parts of his life. So kind of both motor racing. I think the following year, he and Olivia would go, can't remember exactly where it was, but they basically just spent the year traveling, following the F1. And then he also got into filmmaking as well. Around this time, he befriended some of the cast of Monty Python, and would eventually lead to George I think funding some of their films, and then also launching his own his own film company as well. So this album was mostly self-produced. I think similar to Extra Texture, which was also self-produced. But I think George was keen to use an external producer, selecting a guy called Tom Scott, who I think was in his touring band, part of the 1974 touring band. But Scott had other kind of work commitments, very busy session musician. So he I think gets a credit as something production assistants, possibly on here. But he's certainly not the full producer of the album. George assembled on this album though a really excellent group of session musicians, including Willie Weeks on bass, Alvin Taylor on drums, and combination of Gary Wright, Billy Preston, and Richard T on keyboards. So they give it a very kind of, quite American sort of sound to this album. It's always very smooth, feel to it. So yeah, like I said, it was released in November of 1976, but its release was somewhat overshadowed or sabotaged, like in some ways, by his old label Apple, who issued this compilation, The Best of George Harrison, like only 2 weeks before 33 and a Third. And this was despite George, really actively promoting this album, like for a change, like he kind of spent, like I don't think he'd ever really promoted like an album, doing lots of interviews, lots of TV, like lots of radio, but for this album, like he really like threw his all like into like producing it and lag into like promoting it, and yeah, including like some like what have now become very like iconic TV appearances, like including on Saturday Night Live, where he appeared live with Paul Simon, and they do a couple of great versions of what they do. They do Here Comes the Sun and Homeward Bound. It's like one of my favourite like kind of like combinations, like music videos like out there. But like I said, yeah, despite like all of like this like promotion, this was George's like worst performing solo album up to this point. If like you discount like the experimental stuff from like the late 60s, this album, yeah, charted at number 11 like in America, whereas all of his other previous albums, yes, even Dark Horse and Extra Texture had been top 10, and in the UK this got to number 35, which I think was maybe slightly better than Dark Horse. I think Dark Horse failed to chart, but it still would be 35 for like an ex-Beatle really is nothing to write home about. But critically, though, this album was a lot better received than its two predecessors. Billboard magazine called it a sunny, upbeat album of love songs and cheerful jokes, and also said that it was George at his happiest and most commercial, and Village Voice magazine called it his best since All Things Must Pass. So I wish I'd show you my vinyl copy of it here. This is just a standard, I think an original UK pressing of it. There's the cover. I do really like the cover of this, actually. I think the cover really fits the album, really fits where George was like around this time. And then there's the back cover there like as well. Just fantastic stuff. This is a lovely gatefold as well, so you get a nice picture of George there, and then also all of the band members there, which is really nice. And then the inner sleeve is a bit more plain, just got the lyrics on one side, and then 33 and a Third there. Of course, this album was named 33 and a Third because that's the age that George was when it came out, but also, of course, is a like clever pun on the speed of the record, like as well. And yeah, before I put it away, just to again highlight, this was the first use of George's Dark Horse records on one of his own albums here, so that's really nice. And yeah, like I think like every subsequent album of George's was on that lovely label. So anyway, I will just now go through the album's tracks. I'll score each song out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the album opens up with Woman Don't You Cry For Me. Now this one dates back quite a few years to the All Things Must Pass sort of era. I believe he wrote this when he was touring with Delaney and Bonnie. It's got a real kind of in its original iteration, it was quite acousticy, quite kind of bluesy, lots of like kind of bottleneck steel guitar all over it. But for some reason, he decided just to sit on it for like a few years until it got to this album, where the band really give it a much more kind of funky arrangement, a great bass line from Willie Weeks on it, and again George delivering some excellent slide guitar on it. It's just a really confident opener. I think it's just really sets you up for a good time, this song opening the album. So yeah, Woman Don't You Cry For Me would be a 9 out of 10. My feelings call to you now. And then we do bring things down a notch with the second track, which is called Dear One. Now this is a much slower track. It's one of the only overtly spiritual songs on the album. One of George's usual kind of spiritual lyrics on here. My spirit sings to you now, creation stands at your feet, my feelings call to you now, dear one, I love you. I mean, I suppose you could also say it's just a love song as well, but it's definitely got this kind of spiritual overtones to it as well. It's quite interesting musically, this one as well. It's quite synth heavy, this song, actually. There's very little guitar like on it, and I think this was one that George basically recorded like all by himself. I think aside from Richard T, who does the organ bit like on it, everything else like on this song like is George. And it feels a little bit Beach Boysy, this like in places. The kind of like the chorus bit is quite Brian Wilson sort of Smile era. Something like you could imagine him doing that kind of juxtaposition from the kind of like the slow verse into like a much more playful and sort of fun and melodic kind of chorus sort of thing, and like doing it like very suddenly. I mean, I do really like the track. I just think it's far too long, particularly like as like a second track like on the album. Like you really want like the momentum to keep up. But this one is over 5 minutes, and yeah, it doesn't maybe quite need to be like that length, and like for me it maybe goes on like a little bit too long there.
When I saw the way that she smiled at me.
Next up on the album, track number 3 is Beautiful Girl. Now, this is my favourite track on the album. I think it is just a really beautiful song. Like, melodically, really stunning. I think one of George's best, like, melodies, like, on here. This is, again, another track that he had kicking about for quite a few years. There's a demo of this on the All Things Must Pass Deluxe set, just George, like, on, like, acoustic. And I think all he really has is, like, the first verse, or maybe not even the full first verse, just the first couple of lines, and I don't know like if he just didn't finish it like at that point, but then decides to revisit it like here. And it's also quite interesting as well that, you know, originally it would have been written like for Pattie Boyd, but now by this point George had I'm not sure if he'd married like Olivia by this point, but they were certainly like an established couple, so yeah, it's just a really nice song. Like again, the premise just about how like someone can sort of lift you out of like a depressive state, you know, like he sings like a love I needed for this soul to survive, like is a great line. And again, it's just a good personal song about where George was like in like the few years previous, like maybe slightly down, like in like the doldrums, a bit drinking a lot, having a tour that just didn't succeed at all, like the Dark Horse tour, and now he's found love, like he's found happiness, he's found peace, so it's just a really nice song, I think. I mean, my only slight gripe with this is maybe some of like the lyrics could have maybe done with refining that line, like I knew it there and then that she was A1, always struck me like as a bit clunky. Like he could have just said like I knew it there and then that she was the one, you know, like would have maybe like worked like slightly better, but like saying like A1, it's a slightly like weird kind of saying, like saying like she was the best or like whatever. It just I'm just not sure about that. But literally like everything else like on like the song like is beautiful. It's beautifully performed. It's got a great melodic flair, I think, that arguably was missing really from a lot of George's other kind of mid-70s solo material. Next track up is this song. Now, this is possibly the most famous song on the album. It was one of the singles from the album, and written in response to the like the copyright claim made against George's song "My Sweet Lord." I think he basically spent the first couple of months like of 1976 embroiled in this legal dispute. So this song is a very humorous, tongue-in-cheek take like on George's experience like in like the courtroom. Lots of great like lines on it around like even like referencing like there's nothing bright about it. Bright Songs was like the publisher like of He's So Fine, and there's just other lines like, you know, like this song there's nothing tricky about it, this song ain't black or white, and as far as I know don't infringe on anyone's copyright. So it's just a really funny kind of like light-hearted like song. I mean, it's maybe a little bit self-referential, like, you know, being very much firmly written about a specific event. You know, it's not a very universal song, like, I suppose, but it's a funny track though, and I think it's performed really well. Again, the band absolutely like on fire here with this track, and like as a single listed okay, it got top 30 in America but failed to chart in the UK.
It's easier to criticize somebody else.
Okay, next up on the album is See Yourself. Now, this for me is probably the most underrated track on the album. This song, again, like Woman Don't You Cry For Me and Beautiful Girl, has its origins in the 60s, but this one goes way back to 1967, where Harrison wrote this after McCartney's famous TV interview where he admitted that he had taken LSD, and sort of McCartney sort of saying to the journalists, okay, I'll tell you this, but it's your responsibility for not sort of spreading it, kind of thing. So I think George was maybe inspired by that, saying like on this song, like, it's easier to tell a lie than it is to tell the truth. It's easier to kill a fly than it is to turn it loose. So yeah, there's some great lyrics on this song, and it's just about having sort of self-awareness for your actions, and I guess taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions. Musically, it's really strong. It's interesting as well. It's kind of a bit of a return to an Indian kind of influence, on this one, particularly in the time signature. But then the bridge section is fantastic. That bit, I got tired of fooling around with other people's lives. George's vocal on that is just absolutely stunning. One of my favourite Harrison vocal performances there. So yeah, See Yourself is a really, really good song for me. Would actually give it a 10 out of 10.
It's all up to what you value now.
Okay, flipping over to side 2 on the album, we get It's What You Value. Now, this is a fun little track with a kind of motoring theme again, touching on George's influence in sort of motor racing and F1. But this one is very specifically, though, about Jim Keltner, the drummer, who had appeared with George in his 1974 world US tour. But instead of wanting money as payment, he said to George, well, can you just buy me a new Mercedes? So the kind of the first line on this, someone's driving a 450, apparently that's a Mercedes model, and is kind of specifically about Jim Keltner. I mean, this is a fun track. I think it's a good tight band performance. I like the cowbell on this one here, I think really works. And again, it's an assured vocal from George, particularly on the chorus where he gets really high up in his register. It's maybe just a little bit long for me. I think again it's maybe about 4 or 5 minutes, this one here. But it's a good song though. It's What You Value, so I would give it a 8 out of 10.
It's a true love.
Okay, next up on the album is True Love. Now, this one is a cover song, originally done by Cole Porter, written by Cole Porter, and I think the original was done by Bing Crosby. But this one, apparently, I've not actually heard the original, but apparently, this is quite a radical reworking of it. But essentially, all George really does is kind of make it a slightly generic kind of mid-70s, early 80s sounding George track with, again, lots of slide guitar on it, and quite a bouncy kind of upbeat arrangement on it. I mean, and for me, I just don't think the song is actually that brilliant, really. It's quite repetitive. It's really just the lyrics on it are there. It's just the top 2 verses there. So the actual song itself, I don't think is anything to write home about. And yeah, this particular version is, it's okay. It's nothing special for me. Okay, next track up on side 2 is another one I'm a bit lukewarm on, which is Pure Smokey. Now this one is a much more laid-back sort of track, again, very soulful and very much a tribute to Smokey Robinson, who, although still alive and well, even today, was someone that George greatly admired. And I think George said around this song that, why wait until someone's died to tell them that you liked them, sort of thing, or you liked their work, you admired them. That's those themes are kind of touched on a little bit, in the lyrics he sings I'd feel some joy, but before I've shown my thanks, it became too late, he sings. It's just about not having regrets, kind of thing. But then also, is a very much an overt sort of tribute to Smokey Robinson. Even references the song, even references the song You Really Got a Hold on Me, which of course the Beatles covered. But yeah, as a song itself, it's not one that I would ever really revisit out with the album.
Welcome you to Crackerbox Palace. We've been
Okay, next up on the album is Crackerbox Palace. Now, this was another one of the singles from the album and is another slightly humorous song. It's similar in tone, like, in a way to this song. Quite humorous track. Basically about sort of comparing sort of being born like into the world and like growing up and like that, sort of being welcomed into like a madcap house sort of thing. As a song though, I'm just not quite sold on it. I think it's a bit too kind of stop-start for me, like in like its structure. It just doesn't quite settle into like a groove, this one here. It's just kind of, it's like 1 minute is quite upbeat and then next you kind of get like a really slow kind of guitar sort of linking bit. Just something just doesn't quite work for me. And like then like the arrangement on it as well is very kind of it could easily fit on like a slightly weaker album like Gone Chopper, like of George's for me. So yeah, this was the second single from the album and it was a minor US hit where it got to number 19 but again failed to chart in the UK.
left alone with my heart.
Okay, and now the last song on the album is called Learning How to Love You. Now this is a bit of a grower of a song for me. It's probably a track that probably previous to revisiting this album, I probably was just kind of lukewarm on, but actually it's a really nice song. This it's quite mid-70s sort of feel to it, lots of kind of Fender Rhodes like all over it, by Richard T. Sounds very much like a kind of Paul Simon sort of like song like off like this era, but it's just a really cool restrained kind of closer like to like the album. It's a song that George apparently was very fond of. I think he said that he felt this was his best song he'd wrote since Something, which is quite high. Like he obviously thought like quite highly like of like this song. I mean, I wouldn't say it's quite that good, but it is a pleasing song though. So yeah, Learning How to Love You would get an 8 out of 10.
Where we see so much more.
Okay, so overall, this album would score 80%. So I think this is a really strong album here from George. Particularly side 1, I think is like a really strong, consistent side of music. Side 2 maybe slightly falls apart a little bit. Things like True Love and Pure Smoky. But even then, like they're not bad songs. They're just not like quite as good as like much of the material like on side 1. I think this is a real return to form for George. You know, like his last 2 albums had been like a little bit patchy albums, but this one here, like I would say, is every bit as good as Living in the Material World. But it is probably just worth noting though with this album that for me the 3 best songs, Woman Don't You Cry For Me, Beautiful Girl and See Yourself, are all actually older songs, like from like the late 60s, from this kind of golden period, like in like sort of like in like the late 60s. So maybe that is kind of like kind of says something like around like where George was. He would kind of I guess continue to revisit like older songs like throughout like his solo career, but certainly it is interesting that my 3 favourites on here are the 3 oldest tracks from the album. But it's a really nice record here though from George, and George, like overall, like an underrated album in the kind of pantheon like of solo Beatles albums. And for George, definitely for me, probably like top 3 or 4 album like off his. So yeah, that's been my review there of George Harrison's 33 1/3. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.
The ground that